Hey everybody, it's that one guy. I wanted to try to make like a how-to video for WeakAuras. I get asked a lot, hey, can you make this? Can you do this? Can you do that? Is it possible to? Yes. Answer to a lot of stuff is yes. And so for all the things I make, I was like, there's a very simple way to go about some things, and then it can get even more complex and complicated. I can't do the custom code stuff people do. Everything I can do, I feel like the most normal person can do because it's just clicking things and selecting different options. So it's within my wheelhouse, and I don't think I'm the smart guy, just a guy. This is probably going to go off the rails into the deep end at some point. That person's very cool, just flying around. I got a little bit of ADHD. It might go off the rails at some point, go into a whole bunch of nothing. I'm going to try to start super simple, as simple as I can, and then go into the complicated and even show like, here's how I make these things on my screen that you've seen. But if you've never seen any of my videos, or me, I'm that one guy. I play the game. I like the game. WoW is fun, but WoW needs more visuals and more information, so that's what my WeakAuras do. If you're like, what is a WeakAura? This stuff that pops up on your screen. That's a lot. It may look like information overload. That's a whole bunch of stuff for different specs, and this is all of them, all at the same time, right? But it doesn't do that. You can select what's going to be on your screen. But that's what a WeakAura is it gives you visual information based on your buffs or debuffs or whatever's happening with your character or happening in the game. So that's what a WeakAura is. It is an add-on, all right? I use CurseForge. That's not like a glowing recommendation or whatever. It's just that's the one I use is CurseForge. Helps manage your add-ons pretty well. And it's just WeakAuras, right? Like if you just type in, you have CurseForge downloaded, WeakAuras. Bam, that one. Once you install WeakAuras, there's going to be absolutely nothing in your WeakAuras set, right? This will be blank. It will come with nothing in here. Okay? I remember I heard people talking about WeakAuras. You got to have WeakAuras, and I downloaded WeakAuras, and you get nothing. It's empty. So I'm like, what the heck do you even do with this thing? So first, you download the add-on. Second, you go to a website called WAGO. Mine's going to go to my page, but it's just wago.io. wago.io. Sorry, I say things sometimes. Stop adding my name. Whatever, it's going slow. So this would be what you'd see. And you can search for anything, right? And for me, playing Arcane Mage, I'm like, what's if I just search up Arcane Mage, probably won't show mine, but like, here's all the different WeakAuras that you can, look, Moodle's Arcane Mage, that you can look up and install, right? And the different things related to Arcane Mage that you can install into your WeakAuras, okay? And how that would go is you pick one, name Moodle sounds fun, and you do the copy import string, right? And you go back over to your game, to your WeakAuras, and you do import, and then you would do Control V, right, to paste the import string. Okay? I'm not going to do that. But that's how it works, is you download and install the WeakAuras add-on. Again, whatever you're going to use to do it. I use CurseForge. You do you. Then you go to the WAGO website, wago.io, W-A-G.io, and you will search for packs, right? If you've seen mine, you'll get the links to the packs, and you just click on them. And after you've clicked on them, you'll click copy import string. And after you've copied the import string, right, you will go back to your WeakAuras and import that WeakAura string, that string. And then it'll give you, like if you did my mage pack, it'll give you this. Say, hey, here's everything for the mages. And for me, it's literally everything for Arcane, Fire, Frost, and all the hero talents and whatnot, okay? If you want to go a little further into the weeds on it, you won't see the configuration, but you could see the versions. So if you knew I made updates and you didn't like my updates, like I like the old version better, well, you can go get the old version from there. If you know stuff about codes, you can look at these things. I know nothing. I know absolutely nothing. You can see the included auras in my pack. You can see there's a lot, right? You can see how many there's going to be. If there's any comments on it, right? You can look at that kind of stuff. So if any of that means anything to you, great. Otherwise, you can kind of see who imported it, when, right? So I made another import today, and I did a little update today. And then the patch, which is helpful for you to know, because if something has changed, like let's just say with Mage, something changed from the 11.2 patch to the 11.2.5 patch, and this still says 0.0, then that means I probably don't have the update in this pack, right? So that's just some information you can get about it. Neat, right? There's the base thing. People talk about WeakAuras. What is it? It's an add-on for WoW, right? But installing the add-on by itself will do nothing for you. You will just have an empty tab. There literally will be nothing in there, okay? If you want, you can create them. I'll show you how to do some basic, simple ones. Or you go to this website, wago.io, and search for things, right? If you've already found some, right, you can ask people for links. Hey, which ones do you like? Oh, there we go, okay? Very helpful thing to the game. I think without them, you got nothing. There's no visuals. But let's say you didn't go to the website. Say you didn't know any of that stuff, okay? You don't have any of these things on your screen. You can click New Aura right up here. I'm going to jump into my general one. You can click New Aura right up here. Go away, everything. I don't want to see you. Right? And right here, this is how I started. Was in pre-made auras. Okay? Text, and I'd encourage you, there's no wrong options here. You can mess around with all this stuff and just delete it if you don't like it, or change it, okay? Text, again, it's going to show you different types of text. Progress textures, that means it's a visual that will grow or shrink based on usually how much time is left on a buff. You can add models. I've never done one with that, but you could. Textures are just images. Icons are icons, these things and these things. It's just icons, and the progress bar is, like a cast bar, like a bar, either fills up or depletes. So the most basic one that I started with, and that you'll see in a lot of stuff, is just the icons, right? And you can pick its size. Tiny. It's 20 by 20, and I'll show you you can change the shapes. And then because it's pre-made, look, you can change it here if you don't want to do it for the spec you're in, but because it's pre-made, it knows I'm an arcane mage, and it's like, okay, well, here's the stuff so you could make it for. You can make it for your buffs, your debuffs, your cooldowns, or your resources. And you can click on all of them. It's not going to hurt anything, right? Your resources, you could track that it has pre-mades for is arcane charges, mana, or all your cooldowns, right? Does a lot of them. Your debuffs and your buffs. Let's say I'm a new arcane mage, and I know that arcane surge is a big deal, and I'd really like to know when I'm in arcane surge, right, and how much time is left on it. So again, let's walk back through that. All I did was click on new aura, pre-made auras, and an icon. You can pick anything you want with an icon. An icon will do an icon, and it'll match the buff or debuff or cooldown that you're clicking on. And then you can always change the sizes, so you're not hard stuck on a size. You can change it. You can even change what you're tracking. But let's just say we wanted to do arcane surge. This is your next thing, and you can change these too. This means the icon will only show if you have the buff, right? This means it'll always show, but it'll just highlight if you have the buff. And this one is like the one above it, but different. It'll always show it, but it'll be grayed out if you don't have the buff. I like this one when I started making stuff, right? It's grayed out if you don't have the buff, and then it's filled in. It's colorful when you do have it. And this is all your basic display stuff, right? This is what's going to affect what you see, like the size of it. This is its width, right? There it is, smack dab in the middle of the screen. Its width, its height, okay? So you can control the size of this thing, right? If you want it to be really big, it can be. You can cover up your whole character, never see your character again if you wanted to. It's your choice. This X and Y offset just changes where it is relative to the middle of the screen. You could anchor it to your mouse cursor, right? That could be fun. That's how you see some things that follow the mouse cursor around. You could anchor it to a nameplate, or your personal resource display, which would be below you. I know one time I did it on my frame, right? And so I could chunk it on there, right? You can select the frame, but just leaving it as, what it comes at is the screen or the screen parent group. That's fine. Just, you don't need to mess with that, really. You can see all these options. The swipe is that little cooldown thing that you saw, right? That enables all these other options. You can have that showing or not. The timer text that's in the middle, you can hide, right? You can add that later. This is not customizable, I should say. This timer text is just that size. If you want to deal with if you want to be able to change the color and size of your timer text, I'll show you how to do that in a second. Okay. Inverse, that would just mean it's the, as you can see, it's inverted of that. And then an edge just means literally an edge of the thing, and then inverse, same way, right? So those are all your options just for like the overlay of an icon. And this is, again, starting basic, whatever. These just deal with the color. You can change the color of the thing. Apparently not. This one won't change because it's its own fixed icon. That's very cool. Desaturating will change it though. And this is where the icon, you can change what it is, either based, I would leave it on automatic unless you know you want it to look like something different. But this is all just for like the visual, where you see it and what you see is the display tab, right? And this is where you can add more text to show on the icon. So like we said, the timer text, if you hide it, but you go to this text, now it has, like, it'll tell you kind of like options of things. I gotta move this over. So say it's empty, all these things on the right, right? If you hover over, it'll tell you, right? So if it's %P, that means it'll show you the progress or the time of the buff, right? Or the total time you've had the buff, right? The name of the buff, the stacks. Like the most common ones I use are P or S, right? The stacks or duration of the buff. Sometimes you can have the name on there if you want to know, like if you just did a bar, like a cast bar thing, you want to know the name of the thing. And then, yeah, you can add even more things, right? If you want to. I think the most basic stuff is, like, for this example, would be progress, because what that's going to do, and you see it's in the bottom right, is tell me the time and the duration of it. And this is where you could change the size. Like I said, this timer text, there's nothing you can edit about it. It's just going to be there, and it's going to be that size. If you wanted it to be ginormous, right, you can make it ginormous. If you want it to be a different color, like it's black and you can't see it, you can do that, right? You can make it whatever color you want. Again, that's inside these options down here, and you can always add more, right? Add text, add glow, add textures. You can always add more things, but you cannot edit this. That's why I always do hide timer text and then just kind of make my own. Anchor is, again, where it's set. And if you want it to be in the middle, put it in the center. And again, this is where you could mess with its size, right, and its color and stuff like that. This is also where you can mess with the format options. Like you see when some things will show the decimal or they won't, it's right here. So if I change this to show me, increased precision below 60, that means all the way forever starting at 60 seconds, it'll show me a decimal. You can have it go to 3 decimal places if you want to have a seizure, I feel like. Again, if you don't want to see decimals ever on it at all, just set that to 0. And it'll just be the whole number the whole time, okay? That's, again, just kind of what you see, where you see it. The stuff where you can start getting into the weeds on, and this is where you like really start to create the WeakAuras. Again, that's on a pre-made one. Most of the stuff you're going to edit is the display, right? The size of it and the location of it. You may edit the conditions, right? And you may end up editing the trigger, but I feel like as soon as you start editing the trigger, now you're getting into creating your own WeakAuras, and that's fine. So this, right, the type of trigger, an aura is going to be kind of one of the most common ones, right? An aura is a buff, right? Aura player buff, right? You're tracking your own buffs. You can track spell cooldowns. As you can see, it goes to a different image because it doesn't know what I'm tracking. This is where you can track cooldowns. You can track your own health. You can track, what else could you track? I feel like there's power. Power is like when power type, right? That's where you see mana, rage, whatever. If you're doing it custom, if you're doing it pre-made, you just click on what you want to track and it'll know what you want to track, right? But this is, again, an aura player buff or a target debuff. If you want to track something you put on a target, this is again where you could do it. Important to know, this is one thing I learned, is here in the name section, you can type in Arcane Surge, and it knows Arcane Surge. but I strongly encourage you to use exact spell IDs or do it like it did here. So sometimes I'll make a pre-made just to steal the spell ID, or you can look it up on Wowhead. You just type in Arcane Surge on Wowhead. I'll show you. You just type in the ability, and you can get here in search. I do Arcane Surge. I just do enter. All right, and when I click on this, up top, this right here, 365350, that's a spell ID. Okay. The other way I do it is, see, I have Arcane Surge typed in. If I hover over that icon right there, those are all the possible spell IDs. And I see, you see there's a lot related to Arcane Surge, but I would just pick the 3 that share the same icon. And the reason you want to do that is because there are abilities in here that will share similar names, right? Or the buffs will be similar, but you only want to track one specific thing about it. And I've run into that a few times. Like Arcane Soul technically has 2 buffs named Arcane Soul. There's the buff of Arcane Soul that deals with the fact that you're in it, in its duration, right? So lets the game know you have that buff and how long you have that buff for. And then there's an Arcane Soul buff that tells the game how much damage your barrages are doing, because whether it's might just be the tier set, or it might just be just part of the hero talents. But the more you barrage inside of Arcane Soul, the more damage your barrages do. And the name of that buff is Arcane Soul. And it also has a duration and stacks. So the game will just read both. If you're just telling it to look at Arcane Soul, it's going to say, all right, here's all the Arcane Soul buffs, and here's the duration on the Arcane Soul buffs. But if you really just want to know one of them, that's when you have to be specific and use a spell ID. And I usually just put stuff in exact spell IDs. The other reason is I learned when making these, if you just put a name and you don't have a spell ID, that if their client is not in English, the WeakAuras won't work for them. So that was a nice find for me when someone was saying like, hey, I loaded up your WeakAuras and nothing's loading, I have no visuals. I'm like, that's strange, because all the load conditions are right, all the triggers are right, it all loads and works on my screen. Someone pointed out, if their client doesn't use the same language as mine, right, it's not going to know Arcane Surge, but it will know the spell ID. So a good default habit is just always do the spell ID. Okay. If you're making your own, especially when doing debuffs, you want to do own only, because if it's a debuff, like Mage can do Touch of the Magi, Arcane Mage can do Touch of the Magi, and I don't do own only, I'm going to get a timer for every Touch of the Magi that's on my target. So if you're in raid with multiple Arcane Mages, you're not going to know if it's tracking yours or someone else's, so own only is good. Fetch information can be helpful if you want to know some different things, okay, like the tooltip information. This is then where, when we're tracking texts, you can actually include for the text some of the information that's on the tooltip. But if we're just being basic, we're just being simple. I told you I'd go off the rails. You don't need to know that. And then show on. Remember the options in the pre-made was show when you have the buff, show when you have the buff, but show it always, but highlight it when you have the buff, and then show always, but are gray when you don't have the buff. This is where you could do that. So auras found means that it's only going to show the buff if you have it. Okay, auras missing, the opposite. So if you want to know if you don't have a buff up or a debuff up, you do missing, and that means when you see that, that means you need to apply it or do whatever. So auras missing means, hey, you don't have Arcane Surge. Auras found means, hey, you do have Arcane Surge. Always means it's always going to be on your screen. So how will you know if you have it or you don't? And that's where the conditions come into play. This was my favorite thing when I first started like going to the weeds on WeakAuras, is realizing all the different conditions. I gotta slow my speaking down. All the different conditions you could set to tell you the different things. All right, and same thing with the text. So, auras found false, change the color to gray. That means if it does not see, remember an aura is a buff, if it does not find that buff, it's just gonna gray it out. So if it does find the buff, it's not going to be grayed out. It's going to be its own natural color. My favorite thing to do is not to gray it out, but to desaturate it, right? It's going to look like that. So if you don't have the buff, it's desaturated. And when it's filled in with color, you do. So I like that visually for a lot of my things. I changed it from being a gray color to desaturated, and you just have to turn it on. If you wanted to make a different color, like if I don't have the buff, I want it to be red, right? Go for it. Whatever you want to do. This is also where you could do a lot of different things. Like you could say, if I don't have the buff, move this off to the side, right? So this means anytime you don't have the buff, it's going to be wherever you tell it to be. Negative 500 to the left, right? And then when you do have the buff, it's going to be right back smack in the middle, okay? So you can change the locations of things. You can change the height and width of things, right? If I don't have the buff, shrink it. As soon as I have it, make it grow. Whatever works for you. This is where it starts, like I said, this is where it starts to be fun, in my opinion. All the different things you can do. You can say, if I don't have the buff, change the icon to, and that's where if you set a manual thing or whatever, right? You could change stuff. But just for these purposes, I like, if I don't have the buff, desaturate it. And when I do have the buff, that means it'll be colorful. So we have our trigger for Arcane Surge set to show always and set to be grayed out or desaturated if I don't have the buff. Based on where I put it, I can't see myself. And maybe you like that. Maybe you're okay with that, right? So as you play with things, you're like, that's really giant. Remember, like I said, when you're picking the size, it doesn't matter. You can always change it. This is where position and size settings, right? Let's try 30-30. You do that and you realize, oh my gosh, my timer text is huge. That takes up the whole icon. Remember, it's in text. This is where you can change the size of it, right? And the thing that's nice, fun, and annoying is you can't see it. And the trick I learned is if you click this eyeball so that it's full and not just halfway closed like this one, you click the eyeball and then you click your thing again, it'll remove that lock. Otherwise, that lock covers up a lot of things. So if you want to see what it looks like without having to like click off on something else and then click back on it, make sure the eyeball's full and open, and then just click on it again, and the lock will go away and you can actually see. So I think, okay, that's a decent number, or that's a decent size for that number. I actually might like it to be a little bigger. Is that too big? No, I think that's fine. That'll tell me how much time I have left, okay? But I don't want it over the top of my character. I'm gonna move it down to a place that I like it. That seems fine, right? Maybe because I'm a little bit OCD, I just want it to be exactly 100. Perfect. Everything looks good. So it's always gonna show. And when I have the buff active, ta-da, it lights up and tells me I have it for 13 more seconds. You did it. You have a weak aura that tells you about a buff you have. Okay? You can do that for cooldowns too. Okay? Ta-da, and there's another thing I have related to Soul. And look, it grays out. You don't have the buff anymore. That icon's still going to stay there. Okay? If you're realizing like, oh, I don't want it to show when I don't have the buff. Again, remember, you can go to the trigger, right? Display is what you see and where you see it. Trigger is telling your weak aura what it's supposed to look for, right? What buff, debuff, or cooldown it's supposed to read or look for. And conditions is how you change it, how you change the visual effects. There's more. You can add sounds. You can also add sounds and conditions. You can add animations, right? Make it zoom in. I think one of my favorite ones real quick is in custom, and go to zoom in. Type is pulse. And I just do 0.1, 0.1. All right. That means, because a lot of the stuff you see for Blizz is just kind of zooms in. Some of it pulses a lot, but I just at least do a little pulse. So every time I open and close my weak aura, it's going to do that. But it will only do that throughout the game, right as I'm playing, and stuff comes up in the way. It will pulse when it's active. So, oh, it didn't do it. So it looks like it would only, it's because it needs to know a condition on when it's supposed to do that. So you'd have to have it, that's where you'd want it to be set to, only show on auras found. That's probably going to do the pulse for you. Okay, sorry. Stop playing. Back to WeakAuras. Off the rails. But again, conditions, if you wanted to add a sound, like I said, you can do that. If the trigger, this is where you have to be careful for always, right? Because the most common thing to do is like, hey, if the trigger is active. Well, this trigger is always active. So you'd want to do, hey, if the aura is found, true. So when I do have the buff, I would like for you to play a sound. I want you to, don't loop it unless you want to go nuts. Play a sound. And there's ways to add custom sounds. I've tried to add some. It's a whole process. Maybe I'll get into it one day. But you can preview them, right? Like that sounds fun. And then I just put it on master. Okay. So what this means is my Arcane Surge buff will always show. It'll be desaturated or grayed out when I don't have it, and when I do, it should play this sound, Kill Jaden saying destruction. All right, in a couple seconds, we're gonna test that. 10, 2, 1, here we go. Ta-da! So, that's a very simple way for you to make a whole bunch of different weak auras, just using icons, right? That's how I started out, was just using a bunch of different icons, changing their sizes, changing what their visual effects were, adding sound effects to them so that I knew what they were doing. And again, it depends. I think one of the most important things to get right is this trigger, whether it's always or on found or missing, and then just making sure your conditions, and then messing with a lot of conditions, making sure those kind of line up with what you're thinking, right? And just paying attention to know if your trigger is only on auras found, then you can change this auras found thing to just say when trigger 1 is active, right? But it's a decent rule of thumb, right, to just kind of make sure you're using auras found if it's an option. You could even do it like if you have something that stacks, right? You can make a bunch of conditions. Let's just say Arcane Surge could go up to stacks, right? You could say, hey, when the number of stacks is equal to 2 or greater than and equal to 2, right? Do blank. Change a different color, play a different sound, right? Lots of options. Every condition can be its own thing, and you see all of the different options you can do. You can get bigger, change positions, change colors, play sounds, right? It can glow. One of my other favorite things to do, remaining duration. So this is good for buffs and debuffs on targets, right? So if you're trying to keep track of like a dot that you place on a target, and there's a pandemic window, if the remaining duration of the buff or debuff is less than and equal to whatever number you want to set it to. We'll say for this, I want to know it's 3 seconds, right? My favorite things to do is glow and turn the glow on. There's a few other options you can do with the glow, right? The color of it, whatever, but I would encourage you to set up your glow first. That's in the display tab, right? Here's the glow. You can see the glow it's going to be. You can change the colors of it, right? If you want other options, you would change the type of glow that it is. Again, show the glow. You have 4 different glow options, and some of them can change, right? Depending on which one you pick. If that's not there, right? If that's not there, you will not have the option to add a glow. You're like, why is there no glow? Why is there no glow 1? Come back here, click add glow. Now you have a glow. Again, you can choose the type. You can even change the color. But now when you go to the conditions, voila, there's a glow. Again, that's one of my favorite things to do for indicators that something's about to expire, right? Whether it be a buff or a debuff. So we're going to say when Arcane Surge has 3 seconds or less, I want it to glow because I want myself to know, hey, that buff's about to go away. Usually because that is some sort of indicator to yourself on how you're supposed to play, right? If it's going to change the nature of what you do. So, again, I think with even just these pre-mades, right, the trigger, right, whether it's on found or not found, right, what you're tracking, and then the conditions you can set for it, you can do a whole lot. This is how you can go into the weeds and start to create a whole bunch of stuff. This is just, again, on using a pre-made just to have something there. And like I said, new aura, pre-made auras. You can do it yourself though, right? Here's all the same things. Icon, progress bar, progress texture, text, texture, right? But what this will do, right? It's going to be grayed out when I don't have the buff. Oh, I need to turn off the animation. Animation, go away, just uncheck it. It'll be grayed out when I don't have the buff. As soon as I have the buff, it'll be colorful and say, nice. Isn't that fun? Just makes the game a little more fun. I like to try to have things match up to the theme though. You see a bunch of other stuff related to WeakAuras I've made. And then when we get to 3 seconds or less, it glows. Now I know, it's expiring, and it's gone. Right? And now I have Arcane Soul. This is something else I made. I need to turn off my spell opacity. If you have any of my packs, I do spell opacity at 0, just because I made all my own things. I don't need theirs to clog up what I've made. That's how I look at it. Just because I repeat a lot of things, because like my clear casting, right, for Arcane, just a little plug, turns white when it's about to expire, right? That setting we did, remaining duration, glow for our Arcane search thing, you can do that for anything else, and I just set it to desaturate and be white, because that visually tells me that's about to expire, right? This buff I have is going away soon. Blizz's base UI doesn't do that. So I do things like that, where I have the buff change colors when it's about to expire, just because I need that visual cue. But that's it. That would be how you can, again, change this, where it is, right, and how big it is, and you can change the text on it, or if there's glow on it. Like, just play with all that stuff. You can always delete it, right? If you're unsure, like you're like, I'd really like to make this change, but I don't know if it's going to forever ruin it. Just right-click it and duplicate it. Right? Make the changes to your duplicate, and if you hate it, delete it. Right? I'd say once you get to a spot you like, what I started to do is just duplicating things and then tweaking it, and that way I knew if I didn't like it, I could delete it. If I loved the new one, I deleted the old one. You're not gonna hurt anything. Same thing goes for my WeakAuras. You can play around with them, and if you don't like the changes, delete it and re-download it and start over. Okay? The only other, I'd say, important thing to know for the base level is load conditions. Okay? Like this would tell it what class and spec to load for. If you click this box again, you can tell it to load for multiple specs. Well, Arcane Surge is an arcane ability, so we only care about that. This is where you can pick the talent, and you can pick multiple talents. This means this WeakAura will or will not load based on the talents you've selected. So if it is something in your talent tree that you may or may not pick, right, then you don't want that WeakAura to be loaded all the time, just taking up space. So you can change its load conditions to only load when that specific talent is selected, and this is where you do it. If you click on something twice, it means it will load when that talent is not picked, right? But you can have multiple things checked, right? Load when these 4 talents are picked for whatever reason. Or load when these 3 talents are picked, but not this one. That's what that means, okay? I'm just gonna leave it as that. Up top is where you can set it to load when you're just in combat, right? Some of my WeakAuras only load when you're in combat, because I don't want them on my screen the whole time, all right? If you ever, when it's red like that, that means it'll only show when you're not in combat. If you get tired of it, but you don't want to delete it, just check the never box. It'll never load until you uncheck the never box. But you're like, I don't want to delete it. I worked really hard on it. Maybe I'll have a purpose for it later. Just load never. Forget about it. And if you remember you needed it, uncheck the never box. Again, same thing, talent or this talent. Hero talents you can pick. You can do it based off race, faction, if you're in raid, or right, whether you're in a raid or a party, or you're not in a group. And you can also, again, you can see a lot of things. If you double check the box, it goes from one option to multiple options to not being checked. Most of these have that functionality, right? So if you wanted this to only load every time you're in a party in a raid, you check both of these. And now that WeakAura is not going to show up on your screen until you are in a party or in a raid. Okay? Ta-da! You can change it to only load in certain zones, right? The load tab is another place that is a pretty interesting place to familiarize yourself with, important to know. Like, oh yeah, I have it set to load never. There, it's back. Like mounted, right? Like, oh, I don't want to see it when I'm mounted. All right. Oh, sorry, that means only show it when I'm mounted. This would mean don't show it when I'm mounted. There we go. So you could make a set of WeakAuras that only show when you're mounted. Like if you made stuff for your skywriting, woo, you could do that. Okay, whatever you want. And that's why I think these are really important for the game, and I hope Blizz makes something like built into the game, because they can be huge for your class fantasy, for your game fantasy, whatever it is, for whether it's being mounted in skywriting or just your own spec. And I don't know why I'm blowing up like that. That's cool. But like I think this is huge for just your enjoyment, your UI, your customization of the game. But it's something where you got to download an add-on and go to a website or have some knowledge of how to do these things yourself. So that's the basic. That's all you really need to know, right? Again, new aura pre-mades means it's going to know the buffs, cooldowns, and resources related to yours. If you don't click a pre-made and you just click text, right, this is where you need to know what your trigger is going to be, what conditions you want to set, what load settings need to be. And this display text, similar to the display text on the icon down here, except it's just going to be a text, right? And you can have it say anything like test case, right? Accept, make sure you press accept, right? And now there's just gonna be test case on my screen until I change its load settings to say only when I'm mounted. I think some of the fun of WeakAuras is making sure they work how you think they're going to work. Not mounted, only showing I'm not mounted, right? But again, this would be where you mess with some triggers. Let's say I want to know when I have evocation, which, funnily enough, is not evocation. It's a Siphon Storm buff. That's the other thing to kind of know. Like sometimes I'm like, all right, I know it's evocation, but it's actually called Siphon Storm, right? So I would want to know about that one. And again, one thing I do is I go, all right, that's a lot of spell IDs. I can type in all of them, or I can just do a pre-made, or I can look on my iPad and just pick one. For this purposes, we're just going to do that first one. And I usually put them in exact spell IDs. It does the same thing. And this means this will show when the aura is found, which will be a minute from now. So let's do it to where show. Oh no, I entered combat. You can't open WeakAuras in combat. Show when the aura is missing. And that means I should see test case on my screen because I don't have the Siphon Storm buff, right? So I use that a lot for like if you have pets that are in passive, it'll only show if the pets are in passive. It's like, oh, I need that annoying text on my screen. I used to have it, I might still have it, for Shadow Priest. If I'm not in shadow form, text comes up on the screen. Because like, woo, trying to do Devouring Plague when you're not in shadow form, impossible. So some things are useful like that to know when an aura is missing. But if you want to do it when an aura is found, and let's say we want it to be test case, but we also want to know the number of stacks that we have of Siphon Storm. Remember, that's %S. If you're unsure of all of the options, you can hover over. You just click on it, right? And you can see the options, right? %S stacks, the most common ones, progress, name, stacks. You can do this however you want. Let's say I want to do stacks, and I do want to know the name of the buff. So it'll show me stacks, common name, right? And it's only going to show me found, okay? Ooh, we're going to do one more thing. Because it has stacks, we're going to add a condition. So that when the stacks goes over, when it equals 7, because that's the max number, I would like the text. No, I don't want it to change. I want the font size to change, to just be ginormous. Sounds good. So, first, test case Siphon Storm. When it reaches 7, huge! Ta-da! I don't want that on my screen the whole time. But that's how it works, right? That's a text one that you can set up. The important thing to know, though, is the last thing you'd want to make sure you do if you're making it yourself is the load settings, right? This is only for Arcane, so I'm only going to have it load when I'm Arcane. You could have it load only when you take Evocation, but if you're not taking Evocation as Arcane, I don't know. You can also have it load only when you're in combat or whatever else right there. But that's it. That's your nice little mini tutorial into how to make WeakAuras. I am going to delete these because I don't need them. But that's how you can make literally anything. You see I made one for Unyielding Nether Prism. The load setting is, do you have that item equipped? And the trigger is the exact spell ID of the buff that it gives you. And I made the condition, the display, I didn't make a condition, to show me, it's just a text thing, to show me the number of stacks that I have of Unyielding Nether Prism. It's a very similar thing for Spy Masters, right? And that's it. So I can do that stuff. The more complicated things. This ends the simple version. This might mean I'm either cutting off the video